Hi, and welcome to this week's The Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this week is Dan Knott, and I wanted to get Dan back onto the podcast. He's been on a couple of times already, back in early days, back in December 2021, and then came back on in May 2023. So if you've not listened to Dan before, listen to the podcast for. Do have a listen to that because he was a new broker at the time, new into the industry, and it's been good to sort of have a chat with him, catch up with him about his journey. And yeah, I wanted to get back on just really to catch up what he's been going on. I know he's had a challenging 12 months, and I want to talk about that on the podcast. So yeah, let's just get Dan onto the podcast. So welcome back onto the podcast, Dan. How are you?
I'm very well, Craig. Thank you very much for having me back. My hat-trick appearance.
It is your hat-trick appearance, and that's exactly when I sort of looking back thinking, and I know we had a brief chat conversation before we hit record, very, very brief to be fair. So I'm thinking, yeah, third time, and it seems like ages since you've been on the podcast, ages since I spoke to you. So really appreciate you are very busy, so I really appreciate you taking the time to come back onto podcasts and trusting me with no agenda, no topics, just having a chat about what's going on in Dan's world. So, but it's great to get you back on there. So, for those people that haven't listened to the first time you was on, which was way back, December 2021, so sort of three and a half years ago, so ish, and then back on in May 2023. So it seems like a common theory about an 18-month gap in between each one, kind of thing. So yeah, for those people that haven't listened to you on those podcasts, do you want to just give a brief introduction about yourself and who you are?
Yes, so my name's Dan. As you are aware, I am a mortgage advisor. I niche primarily into the first-time buyer space, helping young people to take their first steps onto the property ladder. I joined the industry in 2020, late 2020. My first full year as a mortgage advisor was 2021. I joined the industry on a self-employed basis, generating all of my own leads. That was always the plan. And yeah, that's still the case today.
Good, and it's still, and that's what I want to talk a lot about in terms of, because when I look back at your, I did a bit of research before we hit record. I thought I'm gonna have a look, see when Dan. I knew when you started. I knew what you weren't long into mortgage broking when you first came on the podcast, which is great. But what I loved doing this morning was going back on your Instagram, which we'll talk about platforms and things like that, but going back, scrolling back and scrolling back and scrolling back to your sort of 700 posts, I think it is, something like that you've done. And then looking back and then just sort of seeing the change in the brand, changing you and how that's developed, which just makes me smile because it goes back to the point of what we've talked about before, and what I've sort of said is that just start. Don't worry you look at how your brand's evolved. It's amazing, which is amazing to see.
Yeah, something I sort of live by is the thought that it doesn't have to be done perfectly, but it does have to be done. So get on with it.
Yeah, which you can see that over that period of time. But before we get into the podcast and talk about mortgages, we need to have a bit of a chat about you are a diehard Sunderland fan, Mackem, aren't you?
I am season ticket holder since 1997 in the same seat.
Wow, I didn't think you were that old. I didn't think that. You're from a toddler.
That was when I was 4.
Right, okay.
Yeah, since I was 4, the same seat.
Wow. Die hard Mackem then. Die hard Mackem. And good to see where you are at the minute. Yes,
so we're a good championship side. However, I do fear when we go up, we're probably going to struggle. But we're a good championship side.
Nothing like sort of I know, but you've got a good chance. You've got a sort of you are up there. I think you'll be. I think it's playoffs. I think, is that fair to say for you?
It's going to be playoffs, so it's quite a strange season because we're not good enough to be top 2. We're a little bit behind the top 2 in terms of quality. It's quite clear to see, but also we're miles ahead of the 7th place team. So we've sort of settled into the fact we're going to be in the playoffs already. I actually booked my hotel for Wembley last month, so optimistic.
That is optimism. That is optimism right there. That's quite optimistic from Mackem, because the Mackems I know are quite pessimistic, shall we say?
Well, it is free cancellation.
All right. Well, that's fine then. Yeah, you're fine then. So football, we'll see how this goes. Like, this is going to go out 26th of March, so we've still got 8-9 games of the season by then, so we'll be interesting to sort of see how that plans out and whether you are at Wembley for the bank holiday weekend. And it's like normally the bank holiday May time, so
Exactly,
interesting
yeah.
to see. So yeah, good. So yeah, enough talk about football. Let's get into mortgage. So I think, like you say, when you look back over there, so what's been going on recently? You seem to be very busy. You've had quite a lot. I follow your content on social media. Your Instagram comes up on my feed all the time. What's sort of like been the most recent challenges and what's been going on in Dan's world?
Because I'm so new to the industry, despite the fact that the industry and the housing market went through a little bit of a slowdown over maybe 2 years ago, my business thankfully has been growing year on year. Last year was the most successful year yet in terms of business written, profits, etc. Last year, however, was without doubt the most stressful year of my life, and in turn, the most difficult year within the business. Few different reasons, all sort of from personal life. So my gran passed away in August 2023, which happens. However, my plan was always that I was going to buy her house. The house needed a big renovation, and at the start of 2024, that renovation was ongoing. It was a lot of work. It's always more work than you think it's going to be. It's always more expensive than you think it's going to be. And that we eventually completed the purchase of our new home in April 2024. But to add to that, we had our second baby in May of 2024.
Wow.
So there was a lot going on, pregnancy and a home renovation. Our second baby simply didn't sleep for the first 8 months of her life. So genuinely, for about 8 months, I was running on 3 hours sleep a day. It was pretty horrific, to be honest, in terms of sleep and then managing work on top of that and everything else. But also through 2024, I had a bit of an ongoing health issue, which led to eventually being diagnosed with blood cancer in August. Now, this was ongoing all year before that. So the house renovation, baby, lack of sleep, and the ongoing diagnosis, it made it really hard to sort of manage the business for the first time. In August of last year, I received a diagnosis for blood cancer, which was a big shock. I'm a pretty physically fit lad, no pre-existing medical issues. It's sort of, it really did hit the fan, so to speak. So with that, just to be clear, I received the all clear in October, and I'm okay. I'm absolutely fine. But I essentially turned all calls off for a few months because I didn't want things to get too stressful. It was the first time in life where I've maybe really struggled with stress. Didn't know what was going to happen, didn't know how bad it was going to be, how it was going to end up. And essentially turned off client calls for around about 2 months, which is never what you want to be doing, but it was necessary just to get through those few months and just make sure that I was as healthy as possible, controlling the controllables. But just to add some context to the cancer thing, because people will ask, is that essentially I had a lump which was removed and I was misdiagnosed multiple times. I was told that it was X, Y, and Z. I always knew that it wasn't what they were diagnosing me with, so I always challenged it. And eventually, after many, many tests, I was diagnosed with blood cancer. However, they couldn't tell me what type of blood cancer it was. It was one of 3 things. It was either the best case scenario was it was lymphoma, where a lump was essentially removed and that was the end of it. That was the best case scenario. Or it could have been something called multiple myeloma, which is very, very serious. So we had MRI scans, we had bone marrow biopsies. There was all sorts going on, a lot of very significant tests. It was an incredibly stressful time. But thankfully, in October, it was the lymphoma, and essentially there was no other traces of it in my body. So at the moment, I feel good. But it really caused quite a difficult year in the business last year. And it's maybe caused a little bit of a slowdown over sort of January this year, not in terms of new appointments, but in terms of maybe applications, because I did turn my calls off for such a long period last year. But, here we are. It's just all part of the journey.
It's like, wow. And first of all, I appreciate you sharing that on this podcast. And I know, I've seen various clips on your social media about in terms of not in as much detail probably as what you've sort of just talked about there. But then for me, just for you to talk through that and explain that and think about, I know luckily you've pressed the fast forward button and given everybody the reassurance of, yeah, I got the all clear in October. So I'm guessing that 2 month period of from the August to October, was that the sort of time where it
Yeah.
was the not knowing? So
Yeah, so it was not knowing and sort of many nights really, really, really fearing the worst. I think when you go to these appointments in the hospital, the bone marrow biopsy was probably one of the worst days I've ever had. You're speaking to the doctors and you're asking leading questions, hoping that somebody's going to go, oh, it'll be all right, it'll be all right. But it never quite happens. So yeah, August to October, yeah, that was sort of the main period of stress.
which, like I say, for you to, first of all, for you to come out the other, obviously it's amazing news that you've got the all clear. That is like the one big thing that sort of
Yeah.
that is the really good news. But then you look at like dealing with that in terms of over those 2 months and understandably pausing your like your business then sort of, and I'm interested to get your take on it in terms of where your mind was at. If you don't mind, and if there are questions that you don't want to talk about, then absolutely fine. We can sort of just, I'll edit them out, or we can not talk about it, because for you to like maintain your business and come out the other side and still have a business going and you're still growing with that, the mindset of what you've had to deal with over that period of like a 2 month period. I can't imagine what you've gone through in terms of that. Like you say, I hear horror stories about the bone marrow biopsies, which are pretty not great from an experience point of view, but just the thoughts and things that go, because you do expect the worst, don't you? Your mind just naturally, you've got to. I know what, like without going to detail, because I don't want to take anything away from what you've talked about. I've gone through a little bit of a, not as drastic, but a bit of time where the unknown, where there was that little bit of unknown of, we found something, but we need to check something out, but we're going to get you booked in for an emergency CT scan, but it's going to take 2 weeks. It's like, it's the unknown. And you sort of said something there about controlling the controllable. And it made me realize at that point of, yes, you have you plan worst case scenario. Your mind just goes worst case scenario. Mine did, like it does. But from your point of view, to maintain your business and then still going through worst case scenario. But you sort of said something there on controlling the controllable, which that's so powerful. And you have to believe in that at that critical time, because nobody's going to give you those reassurances. Your family and friends are going to go, oh yeah, you'd be all right. For those people that knew, yeah, you'd be fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah, absolutely fine. Nobody knows. Like a good friend of mine has gone through a similar sort of thing from a cancer point of view to then get through the all clear. And he's like, I said, everybody tells you, oh, it's going to be fine. Apart from the people that
Yeah.
you want to tell, what do you want them to tell you is going to be okay? But they don't give you that reassurance because, well, they can't. They can't give you false hope. They can't give you that reassurance. Oh yeah, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. But then build you up to then pull you back down. So say, obviously they didn't in your situation, mine or my friends. It's like, but yeah, that's real level-headed stuff in there in terms of keeping that together.
Yeah, I think it's, as well as that, I think having two kids, you've sort of, especially two young kids, the baby is still not sleeping. There's nothing you can really do about that. So I think it gives you a good opportunity to be like, right, well, I've got stuff to do anyway. Like, I've got to get on with it. So get on with it. I always say a little bit of a funny one was, I'm a big Oasis fan, and as a child, I was a huge Oasis fan. Still am. And the week I got the diagnosis, they announced their comeback.
Right.
So I can't the exact days, but something like, I got the diagnosis on the Tuesday. They announced their comeback on the Wednesday, and the tickets were out on the Friday, something like that. I can't remember exactly. So that gave me a very early opportunity of being like, right, I'm going to see Oasis. So not dwelling on it. It gave me a very immediate opportunity to be like, no, June next year, I'm going to see Oasis. I'm going to pay 350 quid for a ticket and get ripped off.
Yeah. But
So
who
yeah, I
cares at
think
that point? Who cares? Like
yeah,
that it doesn't matter what it costs. I know obviously it does within reason, but to give you that, and that's what gets you through. And like they give you that focal point of I am going to say Oasis. Did you get? I'm guessing you got tickets. Then you paid £350, and you're going to say
I
Oasis
did.
this summer.
I did. I'm going to see them in Manchester in June.
Okay, okay. But what celebration? What like? But when you're there at that gig and you're stood there, sat there, whatever the situation may be, and and you're a massive fan of that band, you I'm guessing like will you get quite emotional? Is that like you're thinking actually this is like what you've gone through and this moment of this ticket, of purchasing this ticket, where you were when you bought the ticket, which you didn't care about money at that point. I'm guessing you were like, I'm going to say because if I get through this, I'm
Yeah.
going to see Oasis. I don't give a toss what it costs. I'm going to go do it, kind of thing. So yeah, will you be? How will you feel at that moment?
Yeah, perhaps. I did think that at the time. But yeah, sorry, very fortunate, yeah, that obviously the stars did align. And it did help me along the way. But to be honest with the whole thing, when I was going through it, I did fear that it would become an everyday worry for the rest of my life. But to be honest, I don't really think about it too much anymore. So I think I've sort of got away quite luckily, not only physically, but also mentally. It's not really something I worry about too much anymore,
Okay,
rightly or wrongly. Yeah, but
and
I'll be
and,
there though.
and that is the main thing. You will be there in terms of when you sort of because bringing it back to our day to day life of protection. We're mortgage brokers. We're talking about protection. We're talking about things that could possibly happen in the future. It is unknown, and you're putting the thoughts in people's minds, talking about shortfalls, plugging the gaps. However, you talk about protection with your clients, but you said something there a little while back where it's well, you are fit and healthy. It doesn't, and that's what people think. Like, it's not going to happen to me because I am fit and healthy, and I'm active, and do what I need to do. But that's why that sort of thing you just don't know. Like that thing doesn't care whether you're active or not.
Yeah, so I always do use myself as an example now during calls with clients and sort of explain my immediate concern was just, although I do, all the cover was there for myself, it never seems enough. If something was to happen to me, they can't replace me financially.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, you need to be, that was genuinely where will the kids be financially growing up and also in early adulthood if I'm not there. I've got this cover. However, I wish I had 10 times more. And I think that would be the case for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. But we all talk about stories. We all talk about clients and situations. But when if you're face to face with a client, or you're on a Teams meeting, Zoom meeting, or on a virtual meeting, they're going to be looking at you. You're going to be very it's not just a story, it's your story. It's not just a client. This is what's happened to me, and this is my scenario. Like, what a powerful message. Not that clients need to be sold to or anything like, because that's not what you're there to do, is from a protection point of view, but from what you've gone through, and you're going to talk about it, and you've got to be able to talk. One massive thing is, Dan, you're able to talk about, if you're able to talk about that with the clients, it shows about your mindset and how you have moved on from that, the challenges that you faced. If you're able to talk about it with your clients, that's part of the acceptance, that's part of getting over it, that's part of the whole process with being able to talk about it. But yeah, what a conversation to spark with clients when you then talk about protection, because it's not some client anymore, or this happened to somebody in the past, or I've had a client who's done this or that. It's you, and they're looking at the whites of your eyes if you're on a Teams or face to face, and you are talking about your experiences, which is so powerful.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think I've always had I've got a great relationship with my clients. So I've always fortunately been able to explain the benefits of protection to clients anyway. So this only adds to that. And yeah, luckily I am able to protect the vast majority of my clients.
Which is then, like you say, because you want them to be your friend. Like that's the whole point of being a mortgage broker. You want to build trust with these clients. You want to be there. You're there from. You're working with predominantly first time buyers, so you are going to be their friends because they're not experiencing this world. They're not experiencing these kind of transactions. They're not experiencing dealing with all these stresses that they're going to be dealing with. So Dan is going to be their friend because you are going to be their mate. You are there for them because that's just how you work as a mortgage broker. You don't see it as a transaction, do you? You are like good friends with your clients, and I love that. When I looked at one of your instances, sorry, I'll let you to answer in a second because I'm talking quite a lot on this podcast, which I don't normally do. But when I looked at one of your instances, so I say, why do you do what you do? Well, whatever the comment was, and then you've got a clip of just like loads of pictures of your clients moving in, and this is why you do it. That put a smile on my face.
Yeah. So the best part of my business is that my clients choose me. Most of them follow the Instagram page for years. Maybe they've heard me on podcasts, and then they've went to the Instagram page and they've chosen to contact me and they've chosen to work with me, rather than it being a referral, or they've just contacted a local company and they're assigned an advisor. They've chosen to work with me. So to begin with, they probably like me a little bit. They probably trust me, and yeah, they want me to be the person to take them through the process. What that means is we have a fantastic relationship to begin with. The trust is there. They allow me to do my work. And yeah, that just allows you to build even greater client relationships, have better experiences, get great client reviews, have fantastic results. And yeah, I don't really have too much client friction within my business,
Okay.
which I value massively. Because sometimes, when you do get a client who maybe doesn't, it always stems from clients not valuing your role or your advice, and that it can become a real pain in the backside. And it's just not something I want in my day to day. So yeah, absolutely. The fact that I've got great relationships with my clients is without doubt the best part of the job.
I think the thing is as well because you this is long term for you. You're seeing this as like your clients because they're your friends, because they've seen your content. They feel as though they know you because they've seen your 600, 700 posts on Insta and they've seen your social media profile. So when they're reaching out and talking to you, you're answering a lot of questions on your content that they have in their mind. So who better to speak to somebody than the person that's answered half a dozen of questions? Yes, you've still got another 10 or 20 that they're going to answer in your initial contact with them. But at least they are going to, at least if you've answered some of their questions and they feel comfortable with reaching out, which is then more likely for them to reach out and deal with you. So,
Absolutely. I think on Instagram and maybe TikTok especially as well, there's so much advice out there, a lot of clickbait advice. You're maybe not really sure who to trust. One thing I do is I do appear on a lot of podcasts as a guest, and I do get most of my clients from podcast appearances. And I think people having the opportunity to listen to you in short form talk about the subject for an hour, be asked random questions and be able to answer them on the spot, often when it is quite complex, allows people to see that you really do know what you're talking about. You're happy to do the job in public, because a lot of people aren't. And yeah, that again, it's massive for authority building. A lot of the time they say, I've heard you on this podcast. It's clear you know what you're talking about. It's clear you've worked with a lot of first-time buyers. I need some help. So let's have a chat.
and is it local? Is it a lot? Your clients, are they local or in the sort of, does it depend or?
No, so I've consciously tried to, well, first of all, to answer, I do have a lot of local clients, but I've consciously tried to build my following in London. Um, Over the last year or so. A lot of
Right.
the podcasts are London based. I do find that a lot of the listeners are London based, often sort of ex students and things like that. And yeah, I am consciously trying to work with more clients in London. Um, I feel like the buying habits are a little bit different in terms of they are maybe more comfortable paying for an advisor to take them through the process and sort of reaping the benefits of that. As well as that, to be completely transparent, bigger properties, bigger mortgages, of which, at the end of the day, it is a business. And, in where I'm based in Sunderland has some of the cheapest homes in the country. Now, I do work with a lot of clients in Sunderland. However, as many mortgage advisors will know, when you are mortgaging properties worth £100,000, sometimes, the procuration fees you're receiving, if that's all you were doing, you're going to have to do a lot of business, which then can begin to impact the service, your relationships, communication, etc. So yeah, I do work with, I would say it's probably a 50-50 split between local in the Northeast and then a lot of work in London.
So how much emphasis do you put on the reviews and the feedback from your clients, and and what part of the process have you got a process for your reviews, and if you have, then when is it part of your process?
Yes. So reviews are massive. I always say I get a lot of questions from mortgage advisors who follow my Instagram, or new mortgage advisors who ask me questions about how I do things. And I always say, if you're busy, show you're busy. And if you're not busy, pretend to be busy. um, so so reviews, get your reviews from your clients, and they need to be up on socials. I am able to get lots of reviews, and I do get lots of reviews because of that relationship. One, because they want to leave a review because I'm doing the job. Two, I'm very comfortable asking for a review. So I always do it at mortgage offer. When I receive a mortgage offer, I ask them specifically for a review. When I receive a mortgage offer, I typically have a phone call with the client in which we chat through, here's your offer. Your solicitor's going to receive one. You're going to receive one. This is what we've done with your protection. We're going to instruct your property surveyor now. And if you would like to leave me a review, it really helps as a self-employed advisor. Here's the review to Trustpilot. It only takes 2 minutes. And I would really appreciate it if you don't mind. And that does see me get quite a few reviews. If a client doesn't leave a review, I do then follow up, typically when we hear of completion approaching.
Right.
I feel like once completion has occurred, fair enough, they're in the house. They don't want to hear from me anymore.
No. I think most brokers do it. If brokers listening to this thinking and getting information from you thinking, when should I get my reviews? Offer is like most brokers do get them at mortgage offer stage, because that's the good news in it. You've technically done your job. Your job is to get the mortgage offer. I know you do a lot more than that, mate. I'm not sort of saying that's where it ends or that's where it starts, but you do a lot more than that. But that's the good news story with the client. Got your mortgage offer. Like as you said, get the review. The important thing is follow, because there's a lot of brokers that don't follow because they're scared of that. If the client's not left a review straight away, is that bad news? Is that because they don't want to give me a good review? Is that not that I'm not going to get good feedback? So then they're scared to then follow it up. Whereas I say, just follow up. If the worst case scenario, they don't want to give you a review, then that's fine. Get for some feedback on why. What can you learn from them not giving you 5-star or not giving you a review? So don't be afraid of that. But I'm pleased to hear that you do follow up, because that just shows that you're not scared of the response, shall we say.
No, and I think the best way to get a good review is to be sort of good at everything else. If you've communicated well through the process, if you've got them the best deal, if you've provided clarity in all areas throughout the process, then ask for the review, and they're not going to mind.
Absolutely, no, and they won't. And normal feedback is that they won't. So, but it's just getting part of the process. That's the important thing. What I wanted to pick up on, I just made a note there because it is a sort of bit of a side issue. But we talked, like in the past on the podcast when you came on before, we talked about consistency and evergreen content and things like that. You're consistent with your posting. You're consistent with your social media, with your Instagram. I see it all the time come from my feed. What happened when you've got that period of August 2024, where everything's paused with your business, everything paused with what's going on? Did you and I appreciate you answering this and I'm asking you because I know you answer this honestly. What was your thinking? I've got evergreen content to keep posting. Was you scheduled in to push content, or did you just go, do you know what? I don't want clients. I don't want leads. I need to pause my life for a second. Let's just stop everything.
So so the whole thing, the whole health thing went on a little bit more than just August and October, because there was a big lead up to it before that. And what
Okay.
that meant was the content did slow down last year, majorly. I think there was a phase where I hadn't recorded a new video for almost a year.
Wow.
However, my content is evergreen, as mentioned. So there was a lot of reposting content. A lot of the content was reposted from 2 years earlier. Literally lifted the video, added new captions to it, and reposted it. And that kept the account as alive as possible. It's not ideal, but having that there certainly allowed me to continue some form of profile online. And yeah, that's what I did. So that's the benefit of your content being evergreen.
Absolutely, mate, and thanks for sharing that. And I really appreciate you sort of being honest on the podcast. And I think that's brokers should take sort of some reassurance in that evergreen content. We all post evergreen content, whether it's rebranded, like you say, whether it's recaptioned, whatever that looks like. If you've answered a question that is still relevant now for people, it's still okay. And no, I'm not sort of saying you create 7 videos and post like the same one on a Monday, same one on Tuesday. We're not talking about that. We are talking a bit of a time in between. Mine's normally about sort of 4 or 5 months in terms of posting in between new content. So I do repost evergreen content in between new stuff. But it just, like you said there, it's a case of that's okay because it is evergreen stuff that you post, and you are creating evergreen content that can just be reused. No, it's not ideal, absolutely not. But at least you're still being consistent as you possibly can while you're dealing with months of emotional, physical stress. You're still there as the face of the business because this is your business. Nobody's going to do it for you, are they? You've not. If you don't create that content, nobody's going to wake up today and go, do you know what? We've not quite got a Dan Does Mortgages AI bot yet or anything like that that we can just sort of create stuff for, which obviously will come in down the line. But you are still being seen by your potential clients who don't know any different. What's going on in your world and in your personal life, they don't know any different.
Absolutely. And something I never understand, I've never been able to relate to, is when people say, I don't know what to post, or I can't think of ideas. I don't understand that. Still till this day, this might be something I might have mentioned on our first ever podcast after 1 year in the job. What I did when I first started on social media was I created, it was a spreadsheet with 6 months worth of content. It had 6 months worth of content on. I'm still just recycling that now in 2025. It's the exact same stuff. You know, I post about lifetime ISAs all the time, all the time, because my work primarily with first time buyers, and that's what they think about. They think about saving a deposit in a lifetime ISA. So I post about it all of the time from different angles. So one may be simply what a lifetime ISA is. Another post may be sort of the things you need to consider with a lifetime ISA. So having it, 12 months after your first contribution, the maximum purchase price. Another post may be sort of whether there's going to be any changes to the lifetime ISA. Split that into reels and carousels. You've got 6 posts, and you can just keep using them over and over again every couple of months with minor changes. There's loads of topics like that. I'll talk about first-time buyers where these are the concerns that they have. So just talk about them over and over again. That's something I sort of I always stick to. And yeah, I've never understood when people say I can't think of things to post. There is a never-ending supply of things to post.
I think the truth is, mate, and this is like, I'm probably going to get shot down a little bit for this, but I'm the truth is, the people that sort of say, I don't know what to post about, that's just an excuse that they choose, that they just use that excuse of not to post because they don't feel comfortable doing it. They don't want to do it. Well, just don't do it then. Don't make excuses. I don't know what to post. There's plenty of, oh my God, like you say, oh, this is like, that's boring. That's boring. People don't care. Like, it's not about sort of groundbreaking content that you're not going to come up with something that somebody's never posted about before or talked about. And yes, mortgages are boring. That is life. They literally, who gets really excited today, wakes up and thinks, you know what, I'm going to get 100 grand in debt. I'm going to get 200 grand debt. I'm going to have this ball and chain around my leg for the next 40 years. Who wakes up thinking that? They don't. But what they do wake up on is thinking, I want to move. I want that new home. I want to do this or do that. I want to extend. I want to move to that area for the better life. I want to move that area for catchment for school. That happens. That's the real stuff. Mortgages are just a byproduct of the lifestyle that people want to create for themselves and the lifestyle that they choose. So I think, going back to me, I think it's just people are just choosing an excuse and thinking, oh, I'll have that one. I just don't know what to post about, because my God, as a mortgage broker, we have got plenty of things to talk about and post about.
Yeah, and I'm always in the mindset of, you've sort of slightly alluded to it there, that nobody really cares. So just post it all. No, I'm not Kanye West. Like, nobody's waking up excited to see my posts. The way I view my content is, if I put enough content out there and they see Dan Not Mortgage Advisor, Dan Not Mortgage Advisor, Dan Not Mortgage Advisor, Dan Not Mortgage Advisor enough times, when it comes to the day that they need a mortgage advisor, they might think Dan Not. Nobody is, sitting and watching my content on a Saturday night, unfortunately. As well as, when I do podcasts, people always say, oh, well, what if you make a mistake? Or what if you say an answer to a question that's wrong? Or what if you stutter? Honestly, nobody cares. Nobody is going to be watching my content and really intensely viewing it as a fan. They are just watching it for some information, and they might think, you know what, he seems like a good lad. He seems to know what he's talking about. Maybe I'll give him a follow. And it's as simple as that. So yeah, I do agree. I think a lot of the time people say they want to do it, but then they come up with all these reasons why it's so hard. And I think ultimately, maybe you just don't want to do it, and that's fine. So find another way to generate business. Because, yeah, as I say, it doesn't need to be done perfectly, but it does need to be done. So if you're going to do it, just do it.
Exactly. I think the thing is, like, so you don't need all the gear. It's like, yes, you will embrace that and go down that rabbit hole like I have, you have, and you will go through that. However, if you've got a phone, you can create content. Just do, and people like that raw, unpolished, and see yourself develop. It's like I love and cringe and then love again, looking back at my old content thinking, what were you doing? Like, why did you think that angle or that thing or that? But nobody care. Like, and that's for you because you are critical of yourself. But ultimately, listen, nobody cares. We just overcomplicate things. It's just a case of just get yourself out there. And if your mate laughs at you down the pub because you've created content, thanks. Do you want to put that on the post, and then I'll get more. The algorithms will pick it up, and I'll get more people viewing what you're talking, like my content. So yeah, I think people just worry too much about what people are going to think and what people are going to say. And I think at the end of the day, you are self-employed. You're trying to grow your own business. If anybody's going to put you down when you are self-employed, trying to promote and generate business and grow your business because you've had the balls and been brave to go out there and do it on your own. If somebody's going to put you down, let them crack on, because if that's the worst that can happen, that's the worst they're going to say. Just let them crack on with it and just enjoy that ride and enjoy that feedback of, thanks for that. I'm really pleased you what I used to get all the time. My mates were about the podcast. Fucking hell, he's here. Sorry, I swore on the podcast. He's here again he's here again on the I'm fed up of seeing your face on the podcast. Brill. At least I know it's coming up in your algorithm, so it's coming up in other people's as well. So, do you know, and it's just, yeah, I think we worry too much about other people's thoughts and comments when we're trying to create content and not be perfect. But looking back, like I look back on yours thinking, it's got a shirt and tie on. I'm like, what? I can't remember
Yeah.
Dan having a shirt and tie. And then I thought, oh yeah, I can't remember Dan having a shirt and tie.
Yeah, yes, that's how it all started. And I think you've got to think about why it is you wanted to do it. So for me, it's to generate more business and to generate better business, to then allow me to make more money, whilst maybe not working more, or whilst managing a work-life balance of some sort. So
Yeah.
I always think, other people, how do people typically make more money? Overtime, working away from home, I do it by posting on social media, and I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah. You enjoy doing it, and that's the most important thing, because and that is the thing with me. You love and clearly enjoy doing what you do day in, day out, and obviously the challenges that you've faced over the last 12 months or so, you will enjoy doing what you do even more. Dan, we've talked for 40 something minutes, and we haven't even, so I want to sort of end on, and a bit of promotion for you really in terms of it. So I should have done the introduction at the beginning now, that fellow podcaster, you've talked a lot about podcasting on being on guest, but now, is that changing? Are we sort of looking at Dan hosting podcast now?
So hopefully within the next month, I should have started releasing episodes for my own podcast. So most of my mortgage business comes from appearing on other people's podcasts. Through that, I've got quite a good network, I would say, in the sort of financial influencer space and sort of podcasters, etc. So it made sense to start my own podcast. So I've actually recorded 3 episodes for that with guests. I'm going to record a load more this month. The podcast is called Let's Buy a Home. And the idea of the podcast is that it's going to help people to navigate not only the purchase of a property, but also those early days of home ownership. So yes, we may talk finances, saving a deposit, but also we'll be talking, there'll be relatable stories from people online with, Instagram profiles who already post their journey of home ownership or home renovations, whatever it might be. As well as that, there may be sort of there's gardeners on talking about how to landscape a new build garden. People are talking about DIY. There are there's home cleaning accounts. All of these sorts of things,
Wow.
sort of to help people navigate those early days of home ownership. There's a relationship expert in which we'll be discussing how to manage your relationship when you first move into a property with a partner. So we're covering all these different bases, essentially to help people, navigate not only the journey to home ownership, but also those early days of owning your own property.
Wow.
Ultimately, it's not necessarily going to be an industry podcast. There's not going to be other mortgage advisors on the podcast. It will be, very much a case of using my network, connecting to people, having some hopefully fun, relaxed conversations. It's not going to be too serious. And see where it goes.
What a cracking idea! I think that, like you say, it's not for mortgage brokers. It's not our industry kind of thing. But in terms of what you're doing to helping people's experience and the journey that people go through and the emotions people go through and all those kind of things, you're thinking outside the box a little bit, because it's a case of, because all these things matter when people are buying the first home. So and their journey. So cracking idea, mate, and I cannot wait. I'm going to make sure that I will put some links in the podcast. The podcast might not be out by the time we put this out, but then I can put some backlinks in to make sure that people can easily look out for that. So exciting times then, fellow podcaster then now, Dan. Who'd have thought that sort of 3.5 years ago when we first met?
I know. To be honest with you, I would much prefer so it's going to be done remotely. I would much prefer to do it in studio. However, I am at a disadvantage being in the Northeast because a lot of people are down south. So that's always a disadvantage. But that's something I'll be navigating over the course of the year. But there's some quite big guests coming on. I'm excited to see where it goes. The aim is over the next year or so, as last year I had a little bit of a sit out, as mentioned. This year, I've had all of these ideas in the pipeline for quite a while. So the aim is to hopefully grow a podcast. I've got sort of 10 episodes lined up to begin with. I've recorded 3, around about sort of 10 in total that I'll be beginning with.
Nice.
Start a podcast. I would love to start an online community of first-time buyers in line with that. The Let's Buy a Home community, in which people can sort of, whether it's a Facebook group, and people can share their own experiences, have little rants, ask other home buyers questions, whether it's decor or using solicitors or buying a new build using a certain builder, whatever it might be. As well as that, I really enjoy speaking. I've done a couple of paid speaking gigs now, and that's
Right.
something which I really enjoy. It's something I would like to do more of. It's not a priority in the immediate future, but I would love to be paid to speak. And I think, a lot of people might think, That's not going to happen. But I'm very much of I can always sort of see the roadmap because a lot of people do it. And
Yeah.
whether it's going to be specifically about home ownership or whether it's finances or whatever it might be, who knows? But I would like to do a little bit more of that and essentially build some sort of brand ecosystem where the mortgages, the podcast, the community, the live speaking events all sort of feed into each other and build one ecosystem out of it. But to be completely transparent, I am at the same time because a lot of people, may sound like, oh, he's got all the plans, but I am at a little bit of a crossroads with my career. I'm certain, and it always has been the case, that I do not want to own a large brokerage
Right.
with lots of staff working under me, where I might be on a Saturday or I might be working an evening. It's simply something that's never really appealed to me. So that's why I'm also thinking about other avenues where I can use a profile that I'm hoping to build, make money from other avenues. But I don't have all the answers for it yet. But you don't need to get started. So
Exactly.
I always say yes and work it out later.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, you don't need all the answers right now. I think, like you say, but the thing is that, Dan, what you've clearly said is that, again, it's going back to something that you enjoy. People just think, oh, the natural progression is this, then you want to take on staff and do this and that. That's fine for those people. But if that doesn't work for you, that's fine too. But you've found and got this idea in terms of where you do want to be and where you do see your position within this space. And good for you in terms of thinking, actually, I'm going to do it. I'll work it out. But that's what everybody's doing anyway. It's just working it out as we go along. Everybody's the same. So that, like, there's no illusions there. We're all just working it out day by day. Whatever industry and whatever we're doing, that's just live. So, Dan, thank you so much for coming back onto the podcast. Thank you for being so honest, sharing such a challenging 12 months or so that you've had, but like where you are now and where you're moving forward, and a glimpse of the future. And you won't need good luck with the podcast. I'm sure you'll be amazing with the podcast. But great to catch up. Great to see what you're doing. Great to see in terms of what you've got going on moving forward. And who knows? And like I say, maybe we're not leave it 18 months, but we might sort of get you back onto have a catch up and a chat from there. So, but thanks ever so much, mate. Really appreciate you coming back on.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure once again.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for being an amazing guest back on the podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time to come back on and sharing your challenging journey over the last 12 months. It's fair to say it has been challenging, but great to see that you've come out the other side. And it's been great for you to sort of share, being very honest on the podcast and talking about the challenges and experiences that you faced. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, please like it, please share it, please leave us a review to help us reach as many brokers as we can within our industry. And if you are thinking about becoming a self-employed mortgage broker or looking to start your own mortgage broker brand and business, or you're just looking to accelerate the growth of your existing business, see my website, craigskelton.co.uk, to book a discovery call, or just simply get in touch, send me a WhatsApp. We can have a chat about how I can help and support you to achieve your goals for 2025. And as always, please don't forget to run your own race.